And it I was scratching my head on this a few months ago because I saw these campaign commercials coming out for Rick Scott about IVF. So I don't know what campaign consultant dug this up and found this in some poll that this is some issue that moves, obviously, women on how to vote. But they've been pushing this. Republicans have been pushing this now for months. So Trump is really just kind of speaking out in a way similar to how other candidates for federal office have been speaking to this issue for the last few months, at least from what I've seen here with Rick Scott, who is our senator. So, and the other thing I would say on it is, and I continue to say this goes back to, the debate we had on here with the gentleman from Twitter.
Yeah.
Listen, what do you expect? What do you expect? I mean, the last study I saw was that only 13% of Catholics saw something morally wrong with IVF. How many Catholics even know what IVF is or what even happens? Maybe 10? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's closer to 5%.
People at your parish and mine.
Yeah, that's about
your
it.
parish and my parish.
That's about it. So what do we expect? It's like every time things like this happen, Catholics act and people within the pro-life movement are aghast. Like, how could we have politicians who claim they're pro-life running like this? Well, look at your own church. Most people, the vast majority, look at your own family. The vast majority of people agree with this stuff. So, again, this is a failure of the church. This is a failure of the church. I will keep saying it. It's a failure of the bishops, a failure of the priests, a failure of Rome to properly catechize and teach the laity, and obviously to raise up leaders for the next generation. We have no Catholic leaders. There are no pro-life leaders, okay? You may have a few who are in state legislatures somewhere. Governor DeSantis is doing the best he can.
Let's talk about that for a minute, Don.
Go ahead.
Let's talk about that. Eric Sammons is on his way. Let's talk about that. Do you feel like just a little bit, maybe, betrayed is such a strong word, misguided, and maybe we misappropriated our time and not being stronger supporters and advocates? No. Okay, so you're okay with that?
No, because I knew who he was from the very beginning. And I see him as a check against the deep state and the globalists, mostly on foreign wars and things like that. I think they hate him because he's willing to do things when it comes to
for that. You mean Trump? You mean Trump, not DeSantis?
Yeah, Trump.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I think it's good that you had DeSantis in Florida, but now let me ask the next question, and I think that this is the big one. You're in Florida. Trump's endorsement of this. It's going to throw you guys over the 60%, and if it does, this is an awful, awful thing.
He's going to have to face this amongst many other things at his day of judgment if that happens. I can tell you that though the movement is going in the opposite direction here. I don't think the endorsement is going to have as much of an impact as people think. There are people that think that Trump was going to be meddling in the states, like as if he was going to be trying to influence governors and state legislatures. He may try. It's not going to happen. Governor DeSantis is going full bore against Amendment 4. There are other Republican legislators that are coming out against it. They're now starting to actually raise some money against it and fight against it. In fact, I had pointed out that, yes, the Babylon Bee has been did something very horrible earlier this month, but Seth Dillon of the Babylon Bee put in $100,000 and went to a fundraiser in Palm Beach to fight against Amendment 4. When someone shows me the next Catholic leader or Catholic public figure who puts in $100K to fight against abortion, that'll be the first I see. So again, we do not raise up leaders. We don't have leaders in media. We don't have leaders in politics. We don't have leaders in business that step up and fight the good fight and speak clearly on things so that we can have influence over people like Trump. And this is a failure of the church. So I don't understand why people act surprised when their politicians speak exactly like the majority of the public speak, the majority of your family speak. And I will say, and I think most people are not against abortion. I'm sorry. I have to tell they are not against abortion.
I don't disagree. I disagree.
When it comes and you keep people that keep saying that most people, no, they're not. When it comes to abortion, and the church's teaching on abortion, most people think there should be exceptions. It should be up to a certain period of time. That is not the church's teaching. So, no, the majority of the country is not against abortion. The majority of the country is for abortion with limits. That is not church teaching. So this is the reality of the situation around us. And, you know, I think it's obviously disappointing, but you shouldn't be shocked.
No,
I'd be interested to know who is advising him and what they're seeing that makes them think they need to be pushing IVF as like a campaign topic.
I don't understand that particular. Don, hang on a second here. Don from the Bronx, meet Eric Sammons. Actually, you guys might have met at the People's Convention because, Don, you kind of have a tie-in with Turning Point USA, and Eric was there giving a talk with Jack Posobiec. But if you haven't, Eric meet Don, Don meet Eric.
Hey, Don.
Let's bring Eric Sammons on, the editor of Crisis Magazine and 1 Peter 5. Eric, you were the first one out the gun, brother, that I saw, and you came out with a howitzer that this is evil. And you listened to our conversation. You read my tweets. What's the way forward?
Yeah, I mean, Don said it was disappointing. That's definitely an understatement. I'm sure he meant it as one, because this is beyond just Trump is soft on abortion. He's downplaying it. All of that I completely understand politically. I get it. It's already said, abortion is a losing issue for pro-lifers nationally. I mean, that's just the reality. We have to accept that. We try to change it, but that's what it is right now. But like IVF saying the government's going to pay for it and force insurance companies. First of all, how on earth is it ever conservative to have the government pay for services and force insurance companies to do that? That's what liberals do. That's what leftists do. And so just even if it wasn't IVF, that alone is something just is awful. But then when you talk about literally paying for something that is deeply immoral and forcing insurers to pay for it. If you guys, I know, Mike, you're old enough to remember when Obamacare, the whole birth control mandate, they're going to force insurance companies to pay for birth control. And a lot of Catholic organizations were like, we can't do that. There was lawsuits. There was Sisters of the Poor were having to sue the government, getting sued by the government. All that stuff was crazy. I remember Franciscan University, they were like, nope, we're just not going to do it. We're not. And fortunately, in general, the Catholic organization that stood up did win, but this is just a redux of that. This is just the same as Obama saying you have to pay for contraception. In fact, it's worse because you're literally saying you have to pay for a procedure that will end up destroying human life,
right,
in almost every case. And so this is just something that Catholics have to speak out about. Like I made it clear, I'm not saying we can't vote for Trump. I'm not saying that. What I am saying, though, is if we don't speak out against stuff like this, what's the point? Because, it just makes no sense to me if there's not pushback from Catholics saying this is evil, we will not comply with it if you try to implement it, and then we're not really living the gospel in my mind.
And I think, Eric, that's one of Don's points, and I think that others are making that point. I want to drill down a little bit harder on this, though, because I think you're in a unique position. You're the editor of 2 magazines or 2 publications that are very, very familiar to traditional Catholics. They don't pass copies of Crisis Magazine out at your Novus Ordo church in the round. You're
probably not.
You're probably not reaching those people. Yesterday at the rally that I broadcast from Potterville, Michigan, Trump even said to the people in the crowd, is there anyone here that's not already a Trump guy? I thought that was a very self-defeating. Don't say that. Don't say it. So maybe we shouldn't say that about Crisis or about Mike Church and the Crusade Channel and about Don being on and Brother Andre and the St. Benedict Center. But we have a PR problem. We Catholics have been losing since 1958, man. No, since Kennedy went to the Methodist in 1960, when he went to the Methodist and he went into the Methodist church and he gave that talk about, I will never let the teachings of my Roman Catholic faith affect anything that I'm going to do in office as president. We have been on the receiving end of losing arguments ever since. And there hasn't been any popular Catholic or I guess popular is the right word, but a very culturally popular Catholic that has stepped into the breach and said, no, Kennedy was wrong, and we ought to stand up for this. Now, is it going to make a difference for me and you to do this?
Yeah, I mean, we have a very limited audience. I mean, we're not J.D. Vance. I mean, I call him out specifically because he does.
You said he should be denied communion.
I do. Unless he comes out and says like he's opposed to this or whatever, the fact is he's on a ticket that is supporting intrinsic evil. And we've said this over and over again that Joe Biden should receive communion, Nancy Pelosi, all the rest. Why do we say that? Because they are publicly supporting intrinsic evil. That's the reason they should be denied communion. That's what J.D. Vance is doing by being on this ticket. And so, again, I'm not even saying you can't vote for him, but I am saying there is a difference between, as Catholics, what we call out as the truth, what we say is true, and then maybe our decision-making in when we vote, because the church has actually made clear. This is something I think I've been annoyed with for a long time with Catholic pro-lifers saying a Catholic cannot vote for a pro-abortion politician. The reality is that's not true. That's never been the church's teaching. The church's teaching said you can vote for somebody who supports intrinsic evil, but only if that's not the reason you're supporting him and there's proportional reasons to support him.
Right.
Because in this case, they're supporting intrinsic evil, but their opponent is actually supporting it even more. So, it's like the voting calculation is not the same. But what you were saying, though, about how we've been defeated forever. Think about it. 30, 40 years ago, the pro-life position was much more popular, much more acceptable. Yet, what did the Democrats do? They were hardcore pro-abortion, no exceptions. We're not going to compromise on this at all. And they stuck with that. And now what's happened is the country is pro-abortion.
Right.
And as pro-lifers, we've always been like, well, we can't win elections. We probably can't do this. We can't really say anything against a candidate because that might hurt their chances. We might lose, stuff like that. And then what's happened? I've been around long enough. You've been around long enough. Basically, there's no difference in my mind between the Trump campaign and the Bill Clinton campaigns when it comes to abortion. I mean, they're basically equivalent in what they're saying. And so because of that...
Maybe Clinton was even superior, Eric. Safe, legal, and rare.
I know, at least he wanted them rare. I mean, Trump doesn't even seem to be wanting that anymore. So I really think that, we have to at least call them out. And I do think this is just horrific politically. Like, I get that he had to maybe soften a little bit, but what he's done is he's taken the wind out of the sails of his base. Because for example, I had a few people tell me, I'll probably still vote for him, but I'm taking the sign out of my yard. Well, that matters. That adds up. If you don't have an energized base, getting out the vote, encouraging people. And I feel the same way. Like, I have been very strongly pro-Trump saying things in recent months, in the past couple months.
You went to the People's Convention.
Right.
You
exactly.
and I were there.
I know. And now I'm like, honestly, like after he got shot, I was like, I'm going to walk through broken glass for this guy. But honestly, now I'm just kind of like, well, I'm probably going to vote for him, but I'm not going to be like enthusiastically trying to find the good things about him and saying, oh, yeah, we need to all go out and vote for him, because honestly, he's just crushed any enthusiasm for him. To me, it's a matter of, if we vote for him, it's because we're holding our nose. And we're just saying, well, Kamala is just so much worse. That's not a reason for excitement.
Okay, hold that thought. Eric Sammons of Crisis Magazine. Don from the Bronx. J.D. Vance. Now, you were at that Catholics for Trump event at Mar-a-Lago. What do you think the average person, the Caviezel's of the world that were there at the Catholics for Trump? Eric's right. If you knock the enthusiasm down, what's the point? And I'm not disagreeing with you, Eric, but if you knock the enthusiasm down, aren't we then running the risk that the communists actually are going to win?
You do, but I would contend that actually the pro-life movement is not his base.
Okay.
In fact, they were a very unreliable vote for him in 2020, so they're not his base. His base are populist Americans who hate the government and the deep state, and but still want all their stuff. So, but the pro-life movement is a part of his is adjacent to his movement, but it is not a part of his movement. Now, they were, I think, much more front and center in 2020, and were elevated to that position. But I don't think that they are they're in the position that we think they are within the Trump movement, because they're not.
Right.
And I think the other part of it is this. Yes, he is risking the election because he does need to get churches out to vote for him, like he didn't do in 2020. And if they stay home, he will lose. He'll lose places like Georgia, where he needs to get those people out to win a state like Georgia.
That's right.
And if he doesn't get them out, it's going to be a major problem. Wisconsin, I think it's less of an effect, although he's making it easier for Catholics in Wisconsin to say, well, they're both pro-abortion, so I'm just going to vote for the one that gives me more stuff, gives me more government. Because most Midwesterners like government. They like big government. So they're going to go for the big government candidate if you don't give them a clear choice. So, yeah, he is risking. It is a major risk. And we can continue. He and the people around him that support him can continue to deny that, but I think that's a reality.
I almost think, Don, let me go back to Eric Sammons. Eric, I almost think now that it wasn't such a good thing for RFK Jr. to join Trump. I mean, RFK Jr. at least hasn't taken any Catholic and pro-lifers' noses and rubbed it in it like it's a dog that just crapped on the hardwood floor. I mean, these RFK Jr. was like, well, I'm Catholic, I was raised Catholic, but I understand the position and I'm for a woman's choice and all that. I mean, that's a nuanced position, but it's not, we're going to have government-funded IVF. I'm almost thinking that I would wish RFK Jr. were on the ballot, because that would give me a choice.
It's funny you say that, because it's exactly what I was thinking. Because RFK, for all his flaws, he actually does say he thinks there should be less abortions. And he says we should do things to try to minimize the number of abortions. He listens to pro-lifers. I mean, there was a great article by Brian Birch, I think it was of Catholic Vote, who actually talked to RFK in the RFK campaign.
I saw it.
And they made it clear, the RFK campaign made it clear, we want to hear you. We want to talk to you. And we want to listen to what your concerns are. And we want to do things we think we can come together on to reduce abortion. Yeah, that's not the ideal, but it's a lot better than saying we're going to pay for IVF. I thought the same thing. To be honest, I think this whole thing is an unforced error by Trump that makes him look weak. I think what's happening is, Kamala's campaign is hammering home over and over again that a Trump administration will make abortion illegal in all 50 states. You'll be, sent to prison if you're a woman who gets pregnant, whatever. And it's just, and they've been hammering that. And Trump seems to be terrified of being associated with that. And he's doing everything he can. He comes across very apologetic, very much just like, oh, no, I'm not like that. I'm not like that. I thought Trump was the guy who was like in charge. I mean, he's the alpha male. He's like, I'm not going to do what I do things based upon what others say about me. I'm just going to do my thing. And so I feel like it's an unforced error. I agree with Don that pro-lifers are not the major base of the Trump campaign. However, they are a strong segment of it, and he's just alienating them for no reason. Because again, if he just kind of kept his mouth shut about abortion and they just kind of didn't talk about it at all, that would, most pro-lifers would be like, fine, we get it. We understand that. But the fact that he's actually going over and above that and going against the pro-lifers, that's when it's like, okay, I just don't get politically why, because you're not getting pro-abortion people to come over to your side. You're just not going to get them. So what's the point of promising them everything at this point?
Yeah, that's what I said, and I agree with that. Don from the Bronx. Let me go back to Don. This is, I think that I summed it up when I said that people are already writing me going like, dude, you're under no obligation. Don't broadcast any of the events. This, again, is an unforced error. And I agree with Eric Sammons. To tell you the truth, Don, I hadn't thought of this. I had not considered that the guy that you and I saw, and maybe this was his peak, at the People's Convention in Detroit, that was the alpha male Trump. He didn't care what anyone thought about what he had to say. He was on that stage. He was in command of that audience. I said it was audience of around 20,000. That was Trump at his best. This pandering, I'm going to make reproductive freedom, make a women's reproductive freedom great again in America. And now I'm going to do this for IVF, and I'm going to tax you people, and we're going to subsidize it and all this. I agree with Eric. This is weakness. This is him thinking, oh, yeah, the libs are right. They're going to beat me if I don't give them, these women, these single cat ladies, what they want. That's a weak Trump. That's not a strong Trump. I think this just completely is a disaster.
I agree. It is a weak Trump. But I would also say that this again comes from his lack of catechesis, an understanding on issues like IVF. Because the thing what he keeps saying, if you actually listen to what he talks about on that issue, is we want more babies. We want more babies. So his understanding of what IVF is and what happens, I don't think he understands what it is and why it is not pro-life. He thinks it is pro-life in his mind. In his mind, I think this is him reaching out to the pro-life movement.
Okay,
I'm going to be honest. I really do. I think.
Well, he did say that.
Yes.
I mean, it says it in what he's right.
Yeah, he thinks this is a pro-life cause, fighting for IVF. Because in his mind, well, you get to have a baby. Without this, you wouldn't be able to have a baby. So that's how he's thinking about it. And whoever's advising him is obviously advising him very, very poorly, and he obviously does not have pro-life Catholics that are advising him at this point. Yeah, I think that's what you're seeing play out. What's happening in particular in Florida, though, is political, and this goes back to his pride. He still has not forgiven Governor DeSantis for running against him. Governor DeSantis has come out very vocally against Amendment 4 and is putting his political weight behind it. And I think, and he put his political weight behind that bill, which made it a 6-week ban. And I think this is Trump sticking his thumb in the eye of Governor DeSantis and saying, this is my state, not yours.
Wow. You know what? I hadn't considered that. Astute political analysis there, brother. As always, Don from the Bronx, our political affairs correspondent. I'm going to let you get back to your Labor Day weekend preparations and festivities. Prediction, though, sir, is I said this yesterday, and I repeat it after. I think that Kamala's CNN interview was, this is, to me, for Trump, Vance, this is a slam dunk now. There's nothing there. Yeah. There was no enthusiasm. There's no spark there. There's two people that were told you have to go sit down and answer her questions, and you can't give the farm away. So lie about this, lie about that. There was no emotion. There was no passion. There was no fire. There's what Trump would call low energy Kamala, and this was fake Coach Tim. Just playing a fag hag basically and holding her hand. I think actually that they had a worse day than he did.
Yes, absolutely, because everybody was kind of anticipating it. And to be very honest, we're in our own bubble here, our own little small Catholic or evangelical pro-life bubble, and that's a very small bubble. Yeah. So what she does on CNN has a far greater impact than what we think is happening in our world.
I agree with that.
Sadly. Very, very sadly, but that's just the case. So, yeah, she had a bad day. But again, this is going to come down to, who's more activated on the ground and who has a better infrastructure. The left always has a better infrastructure, but this is the first time that anyone on the Republican side has ever tried to match the left in terms of their ground game and actually getting votes in boxes.
Right.
And I can tell you that that's actively happening. And there's a lot of hard work being put into places like Georgia and Wisconsin and Arizona and Pennsylvania and Michigan, and we're going to see, how it all plays out. Trump's not doing himself any favors with people that would otherwise support him, and it is an unforced error what happened. But he's also running against someone that's perhaps even less intelligent than Biden, and without the dementia. So it's and Waltz was an unforced error. Picking Waltz was an unforced error on their part.
Terrible.
That was an error because they could have went Josh Shapiro, as bad as he is, and they could have taken Pennsylvania completely off the map for Trump, and they didn't do that. So they left a lane for Trump to pull off a state in the Midwest with that unforced error. So both sides are making errors. Yeah, both sides are not running great campaigns.
At the end of the day, you're going to see this, and I believe that you already are seeing this. Josh Shapiro is out. John Fetterman is out. They have no desire to help these two clowns out. And look, my opinion on John Fetterman has changed. I mean, he still is a radical leftist, but he seems to have a pragmatic side to him. And that's rare in a leftist. Usually they're just ideologically pure. He doesn't seem to be ideologically pure because this is for him to go like, no, I'm not campaigning for you, dude. Come to Pennsylvania all you want. I'm not. I'm not coming. Me and my sweatsuits are staying home. Yeah, I think that's terrible. Don, as always, Don from the Bronx to Florida,
Thanks so much.
Our cultural affairs correspondent. See you next week, buddy. Have a great weekend.
Have a great long weekend.
Yeah, you too, man.